I am unashamed. What about you?
So welcome back to Unashamed. Zach, in the last podcast, Jase was talking about being dashered with the showing up of a large group of young people that invaded his home. We didn't mean that as a slight, but you are a dasher.
Yeah.
And yet you were telling us you've been dashered.
I got dashered too, yeah. I just got dashered.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the way, it's like locusts, like going back to the Exodus, they descend, the dashers will, and I don't do this, but it's my kids. I think it's really more Jill's influence. They descend on a location, and it's like.
There's actually a story in Revelation about locusts within the context of judgment on oppressors. So is that what you mean by locusts, or?
No, he means basically they start in one end of
devour.
your snack cabinet and they finish on the back end.
Is this another homogeneous? The last podcast, Zach brought that word up, and my instinct was to say, what does this have to do with milk? And so I said that after the podcast, and Zach was like, nothing. And we looked it up, and was I right?
You were right. It's homogenized. It means there's two meanings. It's an adjective of milk, meaning subjected to a process in which the fat droplets are emulsified and the cream does not separate. That's homogenized milk. Because if you take milk, before you go through the homogenization process, it separates.
But give the alternate definition.
Alternate definition, made uniform or similar, a homogenized society.
So Zach,
you were both right.
That's what it does to the milk, though. So the verb homogenize, you're homogenizing the milk because you're bringing it. It's not separating.
It's not separate.
It's all
I
the
get
same.
It's e pluribus unum.
In the spirit of my dad.
Out of many one.
In the spirit of my dad. Hey, I get it. I was just wondering why you were bringing up milk in the middle of a spiritual warfare conversation.
Well, at least he knew that it had something to do with milk, Zach.
That's good. That's progress. So I got dashed because during the hurricane, we did not have water, and so the way we would flush our toilets is we would go out to our pool, which is a saltwater pool. And so I'd get a little bucket, 5-gallon bucket. I would haul it inside, and you pour it. Oh, by the way, you're not supposed to pour it in the container at the top that holds the water. You actually just pour it in the bowl.
Oh,
but
so the salt would tear down your system back there.
Yeah, so they were pouring it upstairs in the upstairs bathroom. They were pouring the water in the tank that holds the water. And so
there's a lot of little small metal parts in there.
And the rubber. So now the toilet leaks.
Oh, yeah.
And so another problem with the storm is you can't get a plumber out here because you can't get handyman. It's just crazy. So
did it ever occur to you to maybe just walk outside in the woods?
Well, I don't mind doing that. I would do that.
He lives in the middle of town.
Well, I do live in the middle of town. It's not like when I lived in Louisiana on 50 acres, you could pee off your front porch.
Well,
in fact, I never peed in the toilet until I moved here.
I find something freeing about the world being my urinal anyway. So, I like
if Fred's outside peeing off the porch, I'm like, Fred, you realize we live in a neighborhood. People can see you doing that. I had to train my kids. No, you pee in the toilet.
Yeah.
But anyways.
I forgot you lived in town. But
I live in town. The toilet
Jase
broke.
would know that if he didn't just blow the horn from the interstate. If you actually stopped at your house, he might know that.
Well, he would know that. Well, I put a sign on my toilet, and because I'm waiting for somebody to come fix it. And the sign says, I started off with toilet broke, don't use. And I put a sign I taped it on they take that off and then they pee in the toilet. So then I upped the game. Then the next sign I did was, under no circumstances are you to pee in this toilet.
Yeah.
Guess what happens? So they still pee in the toilet. So the last
So
sign
you're
I
saying
put up,
I'm serious now.
I'm serious.
I think
So
we have
the
an
last
authority.
sign-
We have an authority issue.
Oh, it's
somewhere.
an issue. I put stop in red, like a red stop sign. Danger. Do not use toilet. Danger, danger, danger.
Yeah.
And that was the sign that was, and I wrapped it around both the toilet seat and the toilet cover. And so it's like taped, like you have to that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I get up there this morning and there's fresh pee in the toilet, like fresh pee in the toilet. And I'm like, So I go wake all the kids up. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, did you pee in the toilet? And they're like, what, Dad? Did you pee in the toilet that I told you not to pee in? And I went to every room, and everybody's like, they didn't do it. So then I go downstairs. I'm like, Jill, like nobody says they peed in the toilet, but there's clearly pee in the toilet. Like somebody peed in the toilet. And then my daughter comes downstairs, so I didn't think to ask because she's in town.
And she's an adult who's married now.
She's an adult who's married. She takes the sign off the toilet and pees in the toilet. In the middle, I'm like,
and the sad thing is,
what kind of
Zach? At the end of the day, you can only blame yourself. It's poor parenting. Yeah. Somewhere in the line, it comes back to you.
I don't think it's me.
I'm saying if your adult children are still defying you, then you failed as a parent.
Don't pee in the toilet.
At some point, Zach, it's your fault.
You have to own it.
Well, I did it, and it was that moment like in an '80s sitcom. I'm complaining to Jill, and then everything just freezes. But you got dashered. Dun, dun, dun. It's like I got dashered by my own kids. A dasher got dashered.
Yeah. Well, it's like Jay. Remember when he had the little...
I was thinking the exact same thing. The sign on the refrigerator.
He did that in the duck call.
It said Exodus 20, thou shalt not steal.
That worked.
Did it?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you just got to go straight to the commandments.
Wait,
you
what
go
was
to
happening
God's
there?
judgment. Well, we had a little refrigerator in the duck call room, and you know what happened.
People were taking his drinks out and drinking them.
I was guilty of it. Yeah. I'd open up the refrigerator. I'm like, ooh.
Cold water.
Well, whatever it was, there was this was before the sign. Now, once he put the sign on there, I thought, oh, this wasn't for everybody. I just assumed somebody.
But he went right past man and went straight to God. Thou shalt not steal. Exodus 20, whatever the verse.
Nobody ever touched it again.
Well, no, I think he upped the game. I think that goes into what we're going to talk about today, where we left off a couple podcasts ago with this divine counsel. You have to understand that there's a cosmic battle going on. Yep. I mean, the defiance of peeing in the toilet, that's not just like a random act. That's part of the cosmic battle, or the stealing of the drinks out of the fridge. That's part of the cosmic battle.
Yeah, and somehow we try to line things up at the lower level. So good segue, Zach. We were in the last time we were in John chapter 10. We'd gotten into this Jesus quoting Psalm 82.
Yeah, we
went and read the psalm. And it had this idea about the gods, and we got into this idea about spiritual beings, we just barely got into it. So we want to finish that discussion because a lot is in Hebrews about this idea. Remember in Hebrews 1, Jase, when it talks about Jesus being made a little lower than the angels, and so you get this idea that there's sort of there's a hierarchy in terms of creation. Yeah. And the impact into humanity. And even Jesus himself subjected himself lower than heavenly beings when he became a man. I mean, that's a powerful statement when this is literally the Son of God.
Well, and even like in Hebrews 13 where it says, some of you have entertained angels without knowing it.
Yeah, so it said, be kind to strangers, you never know. And so that tells you right there that there's still an interaction that goes on.
Well, and that kind of goes back to the Genesis 6, which is probably the most neglected chapter in the Bible, because it's like the sons of God had sex with the daughters of men and produced the giants and
the Nephilim.
Yeah, and then you see this. Well, when you carry that all the way through, I think even Joshua, they took out a lot of the giants that came from that. It's mentioned in there, but then even David and think Goliath. So because that Genesis 6 said, and they will be on the earth, because you think, well, the flood. That took care of that, but there's a kind of a reference, and I think it's 6:4 or 5 that
they did it again. It was like like they did it again.
Yeah,
it wasn't a one-time thing.
And you see that, like, remember in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? So 2 angels were there, but they looked like men because all the city was so corrupt and sinful that they were banging on the door, wanting those, what they thought were 2 men. Yeah. And it actually, the Bible is very graphic there. It says, so they could bring them out so we can have sex with them.
Yeah.
And and then it's kind of the story gets a little weird because Lot was like, well, I have 2 daughters. And I mean, I actually just think he's with 2 supernatural representatives. So I think he was more thinking, they will handle this in whatever way. But I mean, I'm not sure.
I don't know how
he
y'all
understood
feel
that.
when you read that text, because it's an ancient text. Obviously, it was a long time ago. But when I read that, it embarrasses me for humanity.
Yeah.
And I see the same thing today when you're watching a parade of individuals in one of our major cities here in America. I'm embarrassed by some of my countrymen, the way they act. It's so animalistic in nature.
Yeah.
It's like I'm embarrassed of humanity at times, and because those are the sort of things you see. And so it's like, hey, we got representatives here from another realm, and you're going to act like this? You're going to try to call them out to have sex with them in the street?
And I think if you put it into context, what we're kind of asserting is there's obviously something to this celestial divine powers, which it's a little more easy to understand, I think, in the New Testament, because by Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, there was a disarming, there was a limiting of their powers.
So at some point in being a dad, I had this moment where I was like, I need to make sure that my family is protected in case something happens to me. And I probably was about 5 years into marriage, had 2 kids at the time, young kids. And I went out and I thought, man, I hope I have enough life insurance to cover my family. Al, you ever had that thought?
Absolutely. And, as you become a patriarch in your own family, you think about more the idea of that legacy going forward, and you want to try to, leave something that helps your family be better. I think that's the whole point.
I agree. Life insurance, it's an essential part of how you're going to make sure that your kids and your family will have financial security. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance that you can get done today. It's made for busy parents like you, all online, all on your schedule. You can be covered in as little as 10 minutes with no health exam required. So if you got kids like I do, and especially if you're young and healthy, the time to lock in your rates is now. Fabric has policies that fit your budget like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. And they partner with Gerber Life, which I like because it's such a trusted brand. I realized there was a moment when Layla hit a certain age, I knew I had to protect my family with life insurance in case something happened to me. And Fabric is great for just that. There's a no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. Plus, they have a rating of excellent on Trustpilot, and they have free digital wills, access to investment accounts to invest in your kids' future, and more. You can manage it all right from your phone. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/unashamed. That's meetfabric.com/unashamed. That's MEET fabric.com/unashamed. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
And even in Ephesians 3, when he talks about the church, speaks this truth to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
I mean, which is quite the thought. That's Ephesians 3:10.
Right.
And the disarming is the Colossians 2, when in chapter 1, remember he said, maybe I should read that. But what I was going to say is when you go back and look at Genesis, it's like a progression. You have this evil spirit looking like a snake, or is represented like a snake.
But obviously not the kind of snake we imagine, because the curse, he was then, the snake slithered on the, so this is something was up walking around. I mean, this is.
Well, right. Yeah. It was some form, but not unlike, what about Sodom and Gomorrah? Here's two, they thought they were men, but they weren't. They
were one where I read in Joshua 5 on the last podcast, where he comes up on the guy, he's got a sword. He thinks he's a guy from Jericho.
Yeah, this is some being.
The commander of the army of the Lord, whatever that means.
So, what I was going to say is you see the progression, though, of how everything deteriorated. Just think about it. Adam and Eve sinned, but God, came to them and had a conversation. Now, granted, there were some curses that he issued to the evil one, which is where we get the whole birth of the Son of Man coming, Genesis 3:15. And then there's this idea with the woman, remember, and it says your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. So you kind of get the different roles established between the husband and the wife, which I think is a neglected passage. Zach's dad reads that verse all the time in a joking way. But just when he's in the talking about his wife, you know.
You're talking about when he whistles and tells her to hop up in the truck, you know. Like,
all that. And he's like, hey, Genesis 3, the curse, you know, I'm ruling over you, you know. And
he gives a whistle and he's like, come on, hop in the truck.
But I don't think
but he is joking.
He is joking. Don't take that.
The truth is that that my mom was the alpha.
He is. He is. And I'm saying I don't think it means what we think it means, but I do think we have different roles in our relationship, especially in the husband and wife. And then even with Adam, he makes this deal about the ground being cursed and thorns and thistles, and then it's like you'll eat the grass, kind of like what the animals were supposed to do. To your point, because you were supposed to rule over the animals, and now you're acting like one. You're based on instinct. And look, that theme continues through that. If you really look at all the details of that, but then you see, well, how
much so that you get to Genesis 6 and it had fallen apart to the point where he says, you know what, I wish I hadn't even made you. It's time for a massive flood.
All right.
I mean, that's how bad things go.
But then he still said, okay, here's the new plan. And then, but what happens next? Well, then it evolves, downward in that Cain kills Abel. Well, now we have murder.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating about that statement is when God said sin is crouching at your door. Yeah. Well, it gives you the idea of the animal again, like crouching. Sin is this crouching animal. You're acting like animals again. Well, then when you get to Genesis 6, you see the celestial fall with humans. So evidently now somehow they can get together and it produced giants. But then it just got worse because then it led to the flood.
Yeah.
Because it's like when he looked around, the whole world was filled with violence. And I think these people are right who have studied this in detail. It's like when you look at what happened with the celestial influence, kind of like what the evil one did with the humans, humans became way worse.
Yeah.
And which led to the flood.
Right.
And he did inference that they would be here after the flood, which they were, which is why I think you have the story of the giants. And even Jesus went back in 1 Peter, in Peter's writing, and remember when he said he went back to the spirits of those who were disobedient in the days of Noah? Well, what's he talking about? Yeah. He's talking about this fall of these celestial beings and their influence on humanity, which, by the way, I've said this before at some podcasts. He then starts talking about baptism, which I heard somebody do a lesson on that say, baptism for the Christian is an act of spiritual warfare, because he tied that in with Jesus going back to the spirits, and then he used that as an analogy, which is really powerful if you look at that, because what are you doing when you're being baptized? You're basically saying, surrendering yourself, but you're also telling the supernatural celestial world, I'm done with you and your influence. And the Spirit moves in, which is what I think the message that Jesus was speaking to the spirits of the dead.
Yeah.
These, because 2 Peter talks about these celestial beings being locked up until their
gloomy
time
dungeons.
Yeah. And look, all this makes sense. Even think about the pigs, when he cast out the demon and he has this conversation with the demonic forces. But remember what they said? They said, well, send us into the pigs because our time has not yet come. So they had some idea that their time was limited.
Well, to piggyback on that, Jase, you remember the conversation that Jesus had with Satan himself when Satan was tempting Jesus in the wilderness after that 40-day fast. He proudly proclaimed, as he looked around to the splendor of the kingdoms, which would include Rome and every other power of that day, and he said, they belong to me.
Exactly.
So before Jesus even completed his mission on earth, Satan was like, I got humanity. Yeah. I got them. They're in my pocket.
To think about the correlation of baptism, I just thought about this, but this is actually pretty powerful. If you read the story of the Exodus, there's a part, and not just in Exodus, but the whole story. Moses sends spies in, I think in Caleb as well. They send these spies in to go spy on the Promised Land, which is where the Canaanites are at, and these other groups of people. And so when they came back to report this, I think it was in Numbers. Let me look it up. I think it's Numbers 13. It says that they went in and they're like, "Yep, we confirm it is the land flowing with milk and honey." But there's a problem. The Nephilim are there. There's a lot of giants. There's no way we can take them out. And so they
10 out
did
of
not
12.
go.
10 out of 12 said we can't do it.
And they didn't go in, and they
Right.
didn't do it. And so, but then you fast forward, right? And then there's this moment in Joshua that symbolizes baptism now, that they go through the Jordan River, which goes back to the whole baptism in the Jordan River.
Exactly.
The Israel goes through the Jordan River like we go through the waters of baptism to find salvation. They went through the Jordan River when it parted to find salvation. But you know what they did when they went through the Jordan River? Right after they got on the other side, they went to battle, and they did the thing that God told them to do the first time, and they killed every single one of those people.
Yeah.
And you think, well, man, that sounds so harsh. Well, what you have to understand is that it was Nephilim. There was these other these, I don't know what you call them, but they went in there and they killed every last one of them, because it was a spiritual battle. It was part of God's cosmic plan, and the only place that they didn't really go to was the area like where the Philistines would live. And I think it makes sense then when you fast forward then to David's time and you see Goliath, who was also a descendant from the Nephilim.
Exactly.
That's why he was there.
Yeah.
Because Joshua then did not go into that territory. But I think it's important, and there's so much symbolism, not symbolism, that's not even the right word. There's an overlay in the New Testament of God is actually accomplishing all the things that went wrong in the Old Testament. He's accomplishing in the New Testament. So these places that he goes to, that Christ goes to, these are like territorial disputes that Christ is then conquering by casting out demons. These are like territorial disputes. It's a cosmic battle, and I think this is important for us to see, because things aren't just happening like in a vacuum. Like there is a divine strategy on the part of Yahweh, and there's also a lesser divine strategy on the part of the lowercase Elohims, and there's a cosmic battle, and we're actually involved in it. We are actually involved in that battle, so it kind of raises the stakes for us, I think, to think of it that way.
It's funny, Zach, so you didn't know this, but you went there naturally. Yesterday in my sermon, I started in 1 Kings, in that story, in 1 Kings 17, of David and fighting Goliath. And the reason why is because it was his first act as the secretly anointed king of Israel. Nobody knew he was king but God. And, what tied the two stories together was that David declared, as he was about to go to battle with Goliath, the battle is the Lord's, which was the same concept you got earlier in Joshua. And so my point was the Joshua setting that you described was the precedent for the fighting of anybody, of the people of God going forward. And you're right, including the destruction of the Nephilim, which was a little bit of the leftovers from this earlier deal. So that's very good.
Well, I wanted to bring up before I read the Colossians, because Zach made me think, another passage that's used in this is Deuteronomy 32. I don't know if you've studied that, Zach.
Yeah.
But,
I did whenever I read the Heiser book, because he calls his whole kind of thesis the Deuteronomy 32 worldview.
Recently, we were at the Faith, Family, Freedom event, and I got to meet a lot of you from Unashamed Nation. And probably the thing you commented first and foremost was that I look good, that the camera doesn't do justice to what PhD has done for me. And I appreciate all those kind words that you had. I know some of you have been thinking about yourself, and I'm telling you, there's no time like the present to jump in and get that weight off. I turned 60 this year. And my goal was to lose 60 pounds. I'm past that now. I'm 6 months into my journey, 63 pounds down, and I'm thanking PhD every day. Dr. Ashley Lucas is the founder. She's helped thousands of people, and now I'm one of those people. If you're looking at this on YouTube, there's a picture of me at the beginning. Here I am now, and you see, look a lot better, a lot healthier. One of the great benefits is that I've been on blood pressure meds for a few years now, and those have been cut in half, and I'm really working toward the goal of being off of those altogether, and that's because of PhD. There's no gimmicks, there's no pills, there's no shots. All of the things that are out there now that aren't healthy for you. These guys know what they're talking about. I'm also not eating rabbit food, which is great. I stay full. They provide 80% of the food on this diet, so it does help you in the affordability range as well. So join me on my weight loss journey. Schedule your one-on-one consultation today by calling 864-644-1900, or you can visit myphdweightloss.com. That's 864-644-1900. Tell them Al Robertson sent you.
Oh, yeah. And it goes back and looks at what happened at the Tower of Babel. There's some interesting verses in here. But everything we've been saying is basically, which that led to this, which is them under these rebelling God, sons of God, the celestial beings, with humans, to them building a tower to make a name for themselves. That's Genesis 11. So that's what I said. You can see how this thing de-escalates. Well, in Deuteronomy 32, he says, I'll read a couple of verses of this, and you'll see why I'm reading this. He basically, I don't know where I should pick up. I'm trying to get to verse 8, which is the verse of...
Well, start in verse 7 then.
Yeah, let's try that. Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you to explain this. Yeah, verse 8. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind. Well, that's Genesis 11.
Yep.
He divided all the nations, and what Heiser and others think on the celestial beings, that some of these celestial beings became, like, I guess, the rulers of the nations, which is why they became so corrupt.
Right.
And then out of that, God picked Israel. But that was the forming of the nation. But when you finish reading 8, well, it doesn't make sense unless you kind of look at the Hebrew. It says, when he divided all the mankind, he set up boundaries for the people. And watch what this says. According to the number of the sons of Israel. Well, Israel hadn't even been established at that time.
Right.
So there's a little letter beside Israel, and when you look at what that means and look at the Hebrew, well, guess what it says?
Sons of God.
Sons of God. And so his whole point for years, people are not making that connection that these celestial beings were with the humans and they divided the nations.
Right.
And when Jesus, who became an Israelite, from God's chosen nation, does what he does when he gets on the planet, redeems Israel through his death on a cross and is resurrected. And then what does he say? Well, now go into all the world and preach the gospel to all nations.
Yeah.
So wasn't just that he was redeeming Israel, he's redeeming all the other nations that went off to follow other gods, even though they were celestial in nature and had a purpose to do, who abandoned their post.
And it also shows you our human infatuation with extraterrestrial, alien. We're all fascinated by it. And the reason why is because it's all over the Bible.
Well, that's what I'm saying. At some point when you read it, you're like,
I mean, it's turned into big-eyed, big-headed things, but in the ultimate thing, it's all over the Bible. It's giant people.
It's just what can humans digest? They like the idea of David whooping a giant, with the rock. But they don't like really how the giant got here.
Exactly.
But if you read,
well, I think don't you think it helps though to understand, like, because one of the big questions that I've had is as reading the Bible is, man, like the whole Canaanite genocide. I mean, like that's like that never really sat well with me. And I've always kind of, it's God's
I read
prerogative.
it yesterday. It's hard to read, right? It's
well,
even hard to
people
read.
who don't know what you're talking about. I mean, there was whole cities that were wiped
Including
out
Jericho.
by God's judgment and all this. But that's what was happening. You have these celestial beings just satisfying human cravings and where we all struggle. But it just turned into an evil that was so corrupt and was so anti-God that judgment, happened. And that's when you trust God's sovereignty.
Well, yeah, because we're imagining it as like, like small town USA. We're just out there going down there and having a soda pop in Mayberry. That's not the culture of what we're talking about. Like, we can't even comprehend it because it is a supernatural, like, evil that's permeated and mingled in with humanity. It's things that we can't comprehend, like how horrible these places were. And so it does help me to kind of process, at least, and not that I need to give God approval for how he wants to run the world, right?
Right.
But it does help me to understand God's strategy. He has a divine strategy in human history, and he is accomplishing that. And there is a cosmic battle going on. I mean, it's like any other war that would happen. Like, yes, would it be best to not have the war? Absolutely, in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world, and sometimes evil is there, and it has to be eradicated, and so that's what God's doing.
Well, and then even he says at the end of the Jericho incident from my sermon yesterday that he says, "Don't rebuild this. This is done. Like, this is over.
Yeah.
If you do, it'll be at the cost of your own children." Well, guess what? We get over to 1 Kings 17 in the days of Ahab, and some guy comes along and says, "Well, I know what was said, but I'm rebuilding the city."
Yeah.
And guess what? He lost his kids. And it's exactly even what we see to this very day. And I made the illustration that people will live in such a way that they don't care if they sacrifice their children. And look, we see that in our culture today. We had a former first lady just within the last 2 months that said women being pregnant has nothing to do with children.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even get to that point of view that you'll say that and believe that, and yet that's where we are. So that's where.
And what do you see there, which is Satan's tool, and it's all over the Bible.
Yeah.
About him using death. He's a murderer from the beginning.
Steal, kill, destroy. Right? We just talked
Hebrews 2. It's like Jesus came to destroy him who had the power of the death.
That's right.
Of death.
Right.
And all these references of the evil one, the accuser being Lord of the realm of the dead, those under the earth. I mean, all these references are all over the Bible.
Let me say this real quick though: that when you read, because you were talking about Noah, in Genesis 1, when God creates humanity, he tells them in verse 28. He blesses them. So I think this is interesting. Because what you're talking about is the opposite of a blessing. It's a curse. Death is a curse.
Yeah.
He blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth." That was his blessing. And so then in Genesis chapter 6, when God chapter 9, when God blesses Noah, this is what it says. This is after he destroys the earth with the flood, and God blessed Noah, same language as Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, and his sons, and this is how he blesses them: be fruitful and multiply, or fill the earth, subdue the earth. And so that it's the same, and then you get to Genesis 12, which is right after Babel, and he essentially tells Abram the same exact thing: be fruitful and multiply and subdue, fill the earth. And then you get to the Exodus, and it says what Exodus did in the first little paragraph of Exodus. It says that the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied and filled the land. And so Pharaoh comes in that moment as that's the agent of death. Pharaoh is the agent of death. What he hated about the Israelites was that they were fruitful and they were multiplying and they were filling the earth. So that's always the battle. So I don't think it's not a coincidence that you have someone in such a position of power, Al, that would attack the very foundation of life. That's what we're trying to say. Yeah. This is not random. This is orchestrated by the cosmic realm of evil.
You're right. I was trying to wrap this up, but now he's opened up a rabbit hole that I must go down because I'm going to lay something on you.
Zach opens a new rabbit hole for Jase.
A theory that I have, and I wasn't planning on giving this, but he went to Genesis 9. Well, Genesis 9 is my world because the first 4 verses is the birthplace of hunting. But I want to put a theory out here for you. Okay. Up until that time, no animals were dying. Remember, he said, y'all eat the seed-bearing trees and plants. But now when they sinned, he said, okay, now you're down to grass. And even
the animal world will have a dread of you.
Well, but then you get to Genesis 9 where that happens. And you're like, well, why is he introducing that they can now kill animals? Well, think about what's going to happen. Animals will become sacrifices that, where's that verse where it says they will be gifts of God during the sacrifice? Leviticus. I think it's Leviticus 17, 11, maybe? It's in Leviticus somewhere. So, and that's what they turned into, and I believe it's because, okay, now there can be food for you, and I think he was setting a precedent that they're giving their life so you can live, which would be a shadow of the sacrificial system of animals being sacrificed, which would be a shadow of Jesus becoming our sacrifice.
Lamb, yeah.
And we're back to the sheep becoming a shepherd through his death and
to your point, the reason why you're right about that is because at the Passover, when they were leaving out of Egypt, the blood was sacrificed on the doorpost to save their firstborn, but then they ate that lamb because they were fixing to hit the road. So the idea was it linked from that point forward as a meal, but also as the blood of sacrifice.
So the animals got the raw end of this deal because they became sacrificed. Hunting began in Genesis 9. I mean, I've read it 1,000 times. I could quote it to you. But he said, from now on, they will fear you and dread you. All of a sudden, you're like, what happened? And because he was introducing the idea of death, you've brought death into the world through poor decisions, because you left out one verse. When the evil one, after God told the couple in the garden, he's like, if you eat of it, you'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's the evil one say?
You will not die.
You will not die. Lie. Lie.
Which is why Jesus said he was a liar from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because by that decision, he could now control people through that death, which is what he did. He wanted the power. He wanted to be God. That's basically the problem with the celestial world and our world.
Yeah.
That's why we do so many self-destructive things.
And become our little G God.
The animals, which we were supposed to subdue and rule over, we started acting like them. So then he let us kill them so we would understand there's got to be some kind of sacrifice.
Well, summertime is here, which means the kids are home from school. That means the grandkids come over for visits. That means, all of our relationships are flourishing. So we got to find some good things to do with our kids and grandkids. And that's one of the reasons why we love Brave books. They really help parents and grandparents raise strong families by teaching biblical values through powerful, faith-filled stories. Each month, Brave sends out a new book that teaches lessons like courage, forgiveness, or standing firm in your faith.
These are perfect for instilling God values in our kids, which makes for way better families and way better societies.
And Missy wrote one called Because You're My Family, which is about unconditional love. You have that right there with you. Also, Jep and Jess wrote one called Dear Valor, which is a fantastic story about adoption, what it means to be chosen.
I got Missy's book right here, Because You're My Family. And really, we try to model our family upon God's family, which is a good idea.
So we got a lot of good stuff. Our family is obviously big time behind Brave Books. When you subscribe, you'll not only get a new book each month, you'll also get access to Brave Plus, their new streaming platform packed with safe, uplifting stories like Strawberry Shortcake, Bob the Builder, and Iggy and Mr. Kirk with our old friend Kirk Cameron. So while the world tries to confuse and distract, Brave helps families stay grounded. Head to bravebooks.com/unashamed and use code unashamed to get Missy's book, Because You're My Family, and Jeff and Jessica's book, Dear Valor, for free. So we're getting you started off right. That's bravebooks.com/unashamed. Raise them with truth. Raise them brave.
Oh, this is good. This is good because think about this. Think about in the world when someone comes into an organization with that type of agenda. As Satan came into an organization, the earth, the world, the creation, and he had an agenda, but he could not have the power to create life. All he could do is have the power to do the death works, and I think that's
you
why.
Got it.
When you look at like these infiltrations into systems, like particularly like you see it in churches, you see it in government, the bureaucrats will come in, and what they'll do is they'll siphon off the life that was created in the thing, right?
Correct.
And all they can do is to bring death. It's like I heard someone say this about liberalism in churches. It said liberalism is like a cancer. It can't grow anything. It can only grow in something. And I think that's the point, right? It's the death work. Like evil is always the death work. It's like cancer. It can't grow anything. It can only grow in something. And as it grows a work of death that feeds off of the life.
Well,
but with God,
and so you
God
gave the illustration years ago, and I brought it up on the podcast before, Zach. I'll never forget it, about your boys when they were young. You said one of them will build this beautiful Lego village in hours, just making this amazing city, and his brother comes in and destroys it in 2 minutes. And to destroy something is fast and furious. To create something is time essence, and it builds something that's of value and importance. Only God can do that.
So it's a realm. The evil one introduced a realm of sin and death that the humans believed the lie and did. And that's why these verses that I'm fixed to read now make sense. So I've been waiting to read the rest of this for 5 years, but I think we're in a place that we can digest
it took this rabbit hole to get you where you want to go.
After John, we're going to get to 1 John.
Yeah.
And some of 1 John is very confusing to believers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like...
But you're going to be reading out of Genesis 9, correct?
No, I'm not going to read that. I'm going to assume everybody... If you've been following me, I literally quote Genesis 9. I quoted it yesterday. I've quoted that thousands of times because it is the birthplace of hunting, and I am a hunter.
Right.
But you set me up for a way to explain my theory that I believe is the truth, because animals weren't dying up until that point.
True.
So you're like, well,
what changed?
I think I explained that. But now if I read 1 John 3, because this is the good news, when it says, dear children, this is 1 John 3:7, do not let anyone lead you astray. He who does what is right is righteous just as he is righteous. Now just watch where he goes with this. He who does what is sinful is of the devil. Why would he say that? Well, we just described how that happened when he said, if you eat of the tree, you'll die.
Yep.
And the evil one said, oh, no, you won't die. Well, that's what sin and death had its origin. Mm-hmm. So watch what it says. He who does what is sinful is of the devil, because the devil has been sinning from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Well, where's the beginning? We just read it in Genesis 2.
Yeah, it's our beginning.
He was lying,
and
the humans were disobeying God.
Correct.
And watch what this next verse says. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So then here's the part that's hard to understand, but in the context of everything we just said, it kind of becomes clear. No one who is born of God, well, now we're getting into Jesus created the scenario where we could be a new creation, a new humanity in Jesus, because he destroyed what two powers? Sin and death. Not just sin and death, but the power of it that the evil one contributed to, which is a spirit that is at work in those who are disobedient, Ephesians 2. So then it says, no one who is born of God will continue to sin. Well, here's why people are saying, well, what do you mean? Because I still sin even though I'm born again. But he's talking about that realm. You're free from the dominion of sin and death. Think where it says, Jesus said, the law of the Spirit of life set me free from the law of sin and death. You're now free from that power. Yeah. You've been forgiven. So God knows your heart. He's moved in. You're like, oh, I messed up, but I'm not under that dominion. Grace is now able to cover what you did, what you're doing, and what you will do, because you're out from under that realm. He disarmed it, is my point.
And to your point there, if you see in a practical situation where you say you treat your wife terrible, and then you say, man, that I'm convicted because the Holy Spirit convicted, I shouldn't have done that. And you go back and say, honey, please forgive me. That's a completely different reaction of a new realm than what you would have done if tomorrow you do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing.
Now, I realize people listening to this are probably pushing back, saying, oh, no. But I skipped over the first 3 chapters of 1 John. He basically explains what my position through that, because he's like, Jesus is at the right hand of God. We have an advocate. We have God's Spirit. And he actually says, if you claim to be without sin, you're a liar. Yeah. So somewhere in there is an explanation.
And if you're wondering if this is practical, just follow somebody around that once was in the other realm and now is in a new realm and tell me if they're different.
Exactly.
You'll see it.
So suspend your arguments until we get to 1 John. But we read all that because we wanted to read the good news. But this is why I'm going to read these three in succession, and we'll move on and introduce John 11, which is about what? Overcoming death.
Resurrection.
He raised a dead man. That's why we're spending so much time on this. He references 82. He brings in the celestial world. He says, hey, I'm the Son of God. I'm the Son of God.
Remember the criticism, you a mere man.
Exactly.
That's what started
I came here to destroy the power of sin, death, and the celestial powers that are contributed. I am the Son of God. There's only one God.
Correct.
All these other entities were created for a purpose. They, like the humans, left their posts.
Yeah.
Which shows you it's really the best argument ever for why people and celestial beings have a choice in the matter.
Which is key to everything.
Because we're created in the image of God.
Correct.
He has a choice. He created us in his... We have a choice.
Correct.
Celestial world included.
Correct.
He didn't make robots out of celestial beings or humans. And so he knew we would choose that. So guess what? He chose love. So I want to read this. That's why these verses that are hard to figure out make sense. When he says Ephesians 6, that be strong in the Lord and his mighty power, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. But then he says this, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Well, look, most people think that their struggle is against another human.
Yeah.
Look at all the humanly conflicts. And now here God is saying through Paul's writing via the Holy Spirit, oh, no. It's deeper than that.
How many times have you both talked to a couple that were embroiled in such conflict and you say the simple truth of your wife is not your enemy?
Well, now here,
You know what I mean? But you can get to a place where you wake up every morning, you think the person laying next to you is your enemy.
Now, here's where we have to have a disclaimer, because some people read everything we've talked about, and they go too far, and they lift up the celestial world to a godly status.
Yeah.
They're created beings.
Correct.
They're not making you do anything.
Correct.
So what the picture is, they're in cahoots, humans, with the celestial powers that are unseen to your eye.
Right.
But we all know, even the unbelievers in this world, even people who don't believe, when you say, is there seem to be an evil presence in our world? Even those people will say, oh yeah, there's some evil.
Yeah.
When you start looking at serial killers and people, drowning their babies.
Genocidal dictators.
Oh yeah, something is happening that is demonic in nature. And they're like, and I don't even believe in God. I'm like, I think you do.
One of the ways that I'm saving money these days is I switched my cell phone coverage to Pure Talk, America's wireless company. If you're with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, any of the big guys, you are overpaying, period. You're paying for retail stores that you probably never even go into and all these unnecessary perks that you're never going to use. And I can pretty much guarantee you that you're paying a massive premium on what you think is superior 5G service, but the truth is it's not. And the reason why it's not is because Pure Talk uses the same exact 5G network and the same exact 5G towers as the big guys. The only difference is they don't charge you for any of the garbage that you're not going to use anyways. Instead, what Pure Talk does is they give you unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data for just $25 a month. Compare that to the price you're paying now. It's probably about half the price of the big guys, at least it was in my case. I'm a Pure Talk customer, and I made the switch, and I can tell you the coverage is second to none. It's super easy to switch. You can keep your phone, you can keep your phone number, and all your contacts, and all this can be done in as little as 10 minutes. And plus, these guys are a veteran-owned company, so they support veteran causes, like they're working to eliminate veteran debt, they're working to raise money to end veteran suicide, and they're also raising money to support veteran trades after they get out of active duty. We want to be a part of a company that has a mission like that. That's who we want to support. Plus, you get same cell phone coverage at half the price. It's a win-win for everybody. So here's what you can do. Go to puretalk.com/unashamed, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. You can literally be switched over to Pure Talk in less than 10 minutes. That's puretalk.com/unashamed to switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans. Well, that was the easy one. The hard one is then to think, do I do I participate with the demonic? And James would say that we all do. He would say that each one is dragged away and enticed by his own evil desires.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great caveat. And then, but I do think that for me, understanding though, that yes, I have my own evil stuff that I got to deal with me, but understanding that there is another realm that seeks to destroy me, it does kind of up the game and the ante for me, and it ups the stakes of the game. That there's a Hebrews 2 passage that's very scary too, but it also goes to your point, because I think what you're saying is actually, I mean, I wish we had more time to really unpack this idea about power.
Well, let's just unpack, but I think that's where we missed it in American modern culture, is because everybody says, well, okay, the first thing you got to do is admit you're a sinner. Oh, it's deeper than that. Yeah. There's a realization, and you especially see that in the book of John as we're going through. How come he keeps bringing up the evil one, and it's time for him to be condemned? We'll get to all that. You know,
well, Hebrews 2 says explicitly what you're saying. It says that since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, talking about Christ, for this reason, so that by his death he might break the power, to your point, of him who holds the power of death. That is the devil.
Yeah.
And free those who all of their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death.
Well, and that's why,
very explicit.
Back to my marriage illustration, when Lisa and I sit down with a couple, the first thing we have to establish is this is like a tennis match, but you're not playing against each other. It's doubles tennis. It's you and your spouse, and you're against sinful humanity and the evil forces in the heavenly realms. That's who's on the other side of the net.
That's good.
You got to remember, this is the battle we're facing. We're in this together. And so if you don't fight this battle together, you're never going to make it as a couple.
Well, I think 1 Thessalonians 2, the verse in there comes into play because it says, those who believe the powerful delusion have been taken captive by the evil one. Mm-hmm. That's the verse. It's generally what it is. And I think there's a realization, not only that I'm a sinner, but there's a realization that I'm in the wrong camp here.
Yeah.
You know, when I was contemplating whether to give my life for Jesus, I had that thought. And it wasn't because somebody told me. I was reading the book of John, and I thought, he keeps bringing up this evil power. I mean, at 14, I didn't know a whole lot about the celestial world.
But you know what you knew about your buddies and what you saw.
And I thought, there's an evil power out there that if I listen to the lies, because it's a delusion. Somebody's not riding down the road saying, oh, I'm under the power of the evil one. Right. But when you look at what Jesus has to offer and you think about the two dominions out there of sin and death, which everyone participates in that's at the age of accountability, or they just die, you start saying, well, this is making way more sense. There's two sides. Which side am I on? And then when you look at your life, it becomes pretty clear which side you're
Well, Jeff tells a story about when he was first started getting into the double life and getting into the worldly stuff, when he went into a local bar here in town, and there was another person that goes to our church at Whites Ferry Road, and he saw him there. And at first, when you see somebody, it's like, we're out here, but we're both in the wrong place. And he went up to this young man, and the young man said, we've been waiting for you to get here.
Yeah. Well, now that encapsulates.
I mean, that really just captures that argument that, like, the evil realms are saying, come on in.
Don't ever doubt it. Look, the world is just as, to use a Christianese word, is just as evangelistic.
Exactly.
And they love when someone who's been going to church and they're like, oh, come on and join us. Because I think the delusion is, if it's a bunch of us, maybe God, wouldn't punish it. I mean, what's he going to do? Punish us all?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's happening. Because without Jesus, what are you left with? Your sins and your death. Right. What's your plan B to death?
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but I wanted to skip back and read Ephesians 3:16 because it's very powerful. And it says the church, which now we're getting into why God chose us and gives us his spirit, because we make known the wisdom of God to the rulers and the authorities in the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
That's our job, is to go out and say, look, there's a new creation. There's a new humanity that Jesus has formed. He disarmed the powers, which gets to Colossians 2, and I want to read it. I'm going to read chapter 1 and verse 15. Jesus is the image of the invisible God, for by him all things were created. Now listen to this carefully. Things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. And this is the good news. All these powers that we're discussing, the evil one, the celestial beings, the fallen celestial beings that were leading humans to do sinful things and are still doing that, they're all going to bend the knee to Jesus. Yeah. Philippians 2. And Colossians 2 says this when it says, and here we go back to baptism, tie that in with 1 Peter 3, you have the same concept. It said, all of those who were circumcised in Christ have put off the sinful nature, the flesh, that the evil world is using to tell you a lie and get you to do bad things. But it says, but Jesus cut that off, verse 12, having been buried with him in baptism, raised with him through your faith in the power of God. So here's this idea of new creation, new humanity. When you were dead in your sins and in the uncircumcision of your sinful nature, God made you alive with Christ, which is the opposite of being dead in your sins and under the power of this evil world. He forgave us all our sins. He canceled the written code. So we're not under the law, which leads to sin. He took it away, nailing it to the cross. And then this next verse, Colossians 2:15. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross.
I love it. So powerful. We're out of time. I went to say this on the last podcast, but I mentioned that Unashamed Nation, those of you that came for the Faith, Family, Freedom, your stories inspire us to do what we do. And you all told me, we love it. We love being a part of the Bible study. And thank you for that. Because without you guys, we wouldn't have anybody listen to these discussions. Exactly. So we love that. We love that we are now in the realm of the kingdom of God. That's what we're trying to do. So your life change stories are amazing. Next podcast, we'll get to John 11. And also, Jase is on his way to speak to seminary students tonight. Yes. And so I cannot wait to hear what he will lay on these young people who are there. So we'll get an update.
Just imagine 36 young Zachs in a room. And they've invited me, because I had to ask the question. I was like, why did y'all invite me? And they're like, well, we noticed that you keep Zach in line. So we have 36 18-year-old Zachs that you need to simplify the mission of God and the purpose.
So we cannot. We will be waiting with bated breath to hear that.
I'll pray for those young victims.
All right, so we'll hear about that next time on Unashamed. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube. And be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.